Welcome to another video on standard costing and variances. And so when we talk, anytime you hear the term variance or standard costing, we're making a very, very close connection to the budgeting process, which is what we covered in the last batch of videos. And so just as we have a number of operating budgets, we end up having probably even more items that we can quantitatively or financially calculate a variance for. And in this particular exercise, we're going to be looking at sales variances. And in fact, we're going to be looking at 4 of them. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the scenario. It says, assume Casio Computer Company sells handheld communication devices for $110 during August as a back-to-school special with a normal selling price of $160. The variable cost for each device is $60, okay? Sales for August had been budgeted for 600,000 units nationwide. However, due to the slowdown in the economy, sales were only $550,000. So notice we have the term budgeted, and then it says sales were, which is past tense. So we're talking about some actual numbers as well. So it says that we're going to compute the revenue, sales price, sales volume, and net sales volume variances. Okay, and the way we're going to do this is we're going to set up some formulas. Okay, so we're going to toggle back and forth, and I want you to write down some formulas as we go. So the first item is the revenue variance, okay? And if we look at the revenue variance, we see that it is the actual quantity sold times the actual price, okay? And we're going to subtract from that the budgeted quantity times the budgeted price. And we also would have to determine whether or not the variance is a favorable or unfavorable variance. So if we think back to the exercise, let's just go back and look here right quick. Looks like we have actual sales of $550,000, and we were selling these in the promotion for $110. Okay, our budgeted quantity was 600,000, and our normal selling price or budgeted selling price, this could be worded a little bit differently here, is 160. Okay, and for now we're not going to need any information on cost. So let's just plug that in and see what we've got. So actual quantity was 550,000 units times the selling price of $110. And then we can subtract from that a budgeted quantity of 600,000 units times budgeted price of $160. Okay, so let's just see what we have here. Let's start right here first. Okay, so 550,000 actual units at a actual sales price of $110 is going to give us 60,500,000. And then if we come over here to our budgeted quantity of 600,000 multiplied by a budgeted sales price of 160, we come up with $96 million. Okay. So to produce the negative number, I'm going to start over from left to right. And we get 35,500,000. And because this is actually a negative number over on the calculator, we would consider this to be an unfavorable variance. All right. So let's go ahead and plug that in. Unfavorable. Perfect. So it's important to recognize that this is a very, very large variance. And, you know, I'm pretty sure this is the right answer. But, you know, we want to think about this in terms of, you know, we want to break this down very, very simply. You know, we're looking at revenue only right now. And so again, we're comparing actual 110 and 550,000 to expected 600,000, 160. Okay, so I just want you to understand that there are a lot of, you know, this is not a positive situation for this company. However, we are only looking at sales items here, and so as you're going through this, you need to be thinking, okay, well, some of my variable cost variances in this same scenario would probably be quite favorable. All right, so let's move on now to the sales price variance. Notice that just like we did before, the scenario hasn't changed. $110, $160 was expected. And then we had actual sales of 550. So let's go ahead and look at our formula for sales price variance, and it is merely the actual price, okay, this is on a per unit basis, minus the budget price, okay, and then we're going to multiply that by actual quantity. So rather than toggle back, I think we've got these numbers down by now. We have $110 actual minus 160 budgeted, okay, times 550,000 actual quantity sold. And so let's calculate this. I think we can do this. So we've got a negative $50 times 550,000. And so hopefully we understand immediately before we ever get to the number that this is going to be, because we're multiplying a negative times a positive, okay, we're going to have a unfavorable variance. So we don't generally attach a negative sign to unfavorable variances. We just list our answer, 27,500,000, and then we indicate with like the letter U that this is an unfavorable variance. And so we plot that here. Okay. Unfavorable. All right, so think about it. Think about this one for just a moment. If you think back to the formula, it's actual sales price minus budgeted sales price times actual quantity. So at the moment that we recognize that the actual sales price is lower than the budgeted sales price of 160, we already know that we're going to have an unfavorable variance. The key to variances is to always ask yourself, what are they asking me for? Okay, because if you don't do that, you are going to become very, very confused. The number of potential variances that you might have to calculate, for example, on an exam, is going to be so large that it will be quite confusing for you. Okay, so let's move on here. Next, we have a sales volume variance. So if you think about it, by this point you probably should be getting to the point where you think, okay, did I sell more than or less than I expected? That's really all you need to get this part over here, right? We already know we sold fewer than we anticipated. Now we just have to determine the amount of the variance. So our formula, which you probably can figure out on your own, if you just think about it a little bit, is actual quantity minus budgeted quantity, right? So let's go ahead and plot that because we have these numbers just about memorized at this point. 550,000 units minus 600,000 units times a budgeted price of 160. Okay. Let's see here. So we sold 50,000 fewer units than we anticipated. Okay. And so we know that the variance is going to be unfavorable. But by how much? By $8 million. That's how much. So here we have another variance which is unfavorable. And again, always pay attention to words like volume. And then ask yourself the most basic question: did I sell more than I wanted to or less than I wanted to? And if we think about it that way, it becomes a little bit easier for us. All right, one more. Oh, listen, we didn't put that in there. Let's see, is that 8 million? It is. And this is an unfavorable variance. And then net sales volume variance, right? All right. So what is the net sales volume variance? All right. So what I'm hoping that you would be picking up, at least in part here, is that we're going to be dealing with some quantities. Okay. So our formula for net sales volume variance, and let's just go take a look at it, is actual quantity minus the budgeted quantity times the budgeted contribution margin. Now, they did not explicitly give this information to us, but we can probably figure it out. Let's go back over here. Notice that we were going to sell these items for $160, and what they do? They gave us, it says the standard variable cost or budgeted variable cost for each device is $60. Well, if we remember anything from a couple of our previous topics, we know that contribution margin is sales minus variable cost, so we can do this on a per unit basis and come up with $100. This would be our budgeted contribution margin. Okay, so let's go back over here and plug all of this in. Budgeted quantity 550,000 minus, actual quantity was 550,000 minus budgeted quantity of 600,000 times our budgeted contribution margin of 100. Okay. So actually we've got the $100 on the calculator already. So let's multiply that by 50,000. And so that gives us 5 million, and because this was a negative here, that would be an unfavorable variance. Okay. And then we're going to check our work, and we got it right. Praise the Lord. Okay, that's it for this video.